At 4:17 a.m. local time, radar stations in Eastern Europe detect dozens of incoming high-speed objects from Russian airspace. At first, it's dismissed as a glitch. Then, a flash appears over the Baltic Sea. Moments later, silence. Communications with several NATO outposts are lost. In less than 5 minutes, the world realizes this is not an exercise. This is the day NATO strikes back. The first wave begins with precision missile attacks across Poland, Lithuania, and Germany. Russian Iskander launchers from Kaliningrad fire salvos targeting air bases and radar arrays. Within minutes, explosions ripple across Europe's eastern flank. Emergency response channels light up. The words Article 5, NATO's collective defense clause, dominate encrypted communications. In Brussels, NATO's Emergency Council is called into session. In Washington, the Situation Room comes alive. Generals, intelligence directors, and the president gather in silence. There's no doubt anymore. The war NATO has spent 75 years preparing for has begun. Inside the Pentagon, analysts review the radar data again. It's confirmed. Russian bombers crossed into Polish airspace. An electronic warfare strike knocked out several NATO satellites over Europe. By 5:30 a.m., the decision is made. NATO will respond. Operation Iron Shield is activated. U.S., British, and German forces begin mobilizing under coordinated defense plans. Within hours, 500 fighter jets are airborne. NATO's missile defense systems, including the Aegis platforms in the Mediterranean and Patriot batteries in Poland, go fully active. The response begins with retaliatory precision strikes on Russian positions in Kaliningrad, Belarus, and Crimea. F-35s and B-2 bombers launch standoff missiles, targeting command centers and supply depots. The order is clear: contain, control, counterattack, without triggering nuclear escalation. Across Europe, panic spreads faster than information. Social media collapses under disinformation and state-sponsored cyber attacks. Gas lines stretch for miles as civilians prepare for blackouts. In Berlin, sirens echo as citizens rush underground. In Warsaw, air defense units intercept 3 incoming missiles. One detonates in the air, scattering debris over the suburbs. In London, the Prime Minister appears on live television for a statement the world hoped to never hear. NATO has been attacked. We are now in a state of war. The alliance invokes Article 5 for only the second time in history. The first was 9/11. Now, it's Europe's turn to defend itself. U.S. and British troops begin deploying reinforcements through Ramstein and Rzeszów air bases. The Baltic Sea becomes a combat zone. A Russian naval task force attempts to cut off NATO's northern flank, but is intercepted by Norwegian and British submarines. Meanwhile, cyber warfare cripples critical infrastructure. Energy grids flicker, banking systems freeze, satellites go offline. The modern battlefield has expanded into every screen, every network, every phone. This is not just a military conflict. This is total hybrid war. Inside the Kremlin, the reaction is swift and defiant. Russian state media declares NATO aggression, broadcasting images of destroyed villages in Belgorod and Smolensk. The leadership blames the West for provoking escalation. But behind closed doors, the tone is darker. Intelligence reports reveal heavy losses in the first 12 hours. NATO's precision strikes cripple multiple airfields and radar arrays. Commanders fear that continued losses could break the chain of control. In response, Moscow deploys nuclear-capable bombers to forward positions in Murmansk and Crimea. Satellite images show mobile launchers on the move. NATO's reconnaissance aircraft detect unusual radiation signatures, possibly indicating nuclear warhead activation. The world watches the clock tick closer to midnight. The U.S. issues a stern ultimatum. Any use of nuclear weapons, tactical or otherwise, will be met with overwhelming response. In private, NATO intelligence warns that Russia's early warning network has been degraded. If communications collapse further, a mistaken launch could end civilization in less than an hour. By hour 24, NATO shifts from defense to offense. Operation Thunder Rain begins. Coordinated air and drone strikes target ammunition depots, logistics hubs, and field command posts across Belarus and Western Russia. Special forces conduct cross-border sabotage missions, disrupting fuel lines and rail networks critical to the Russian advance. In the skies, the largest air engagement since World War II erupts over Eastern Europe. More than 200 aircraft clash in a single battle spanning hundreds of miles. Stealth bombers evade radar, while electronic warfare planes jam enemy communications. Meanwhile, civilians across Europe face a grim new reality. Supermarket shelves empty within hours. Mobile networks collapse. Gas pipelines shut down. The continent begins to feel the first signs of economic collapse. But amid the chaos, NATO gains momentum. By hour 36, Allied forces push Russian units back from the Suwalki Gap, the narrow corridor connecting Poland and Lithuania. This victory restores partial supply lines to the Baltic states, preventing a full encirclement. For the first time, the narrative shifts. The question is no longer, can NATO survive? It's, can Russia hold? As dawn rises on the third day, satellite imagery reveals massive military movements inside Russia. Convoys of armored vehicles move toward Belarus. A single missile convoy, believed to be nuclear, disappears from known locations. NATO intelligence confirms partial evacuation of Moscow's government sectors. At the same time, diplomatic channels go dark. In the White House, a chilling scenario unfolds. What if Russia, facing battlefield defeat, decides to escalate to the unthinkable? Inside a classified bunker, world leaders debate their options. Should NATO press forward or call for ceasefire before crossing a nuclear threshold? The president hesitates. But as NATO command monitors missile movements in western Russia, one radar station near the Arctic Circle suddenly goes offline. Minutes later, sensors detect a launch signature. The command center freezes. For 90 seconds, the world holds its breath. Then, the radar returns. False alarm. A technical glitch. The room exhales, but the silence that follows is heavier than before. Everyone knows how close they just came. By the end of the 72nd hour, both sides step back from the brink. Through emergency back channels, a temporary ceasefire is negotiated. The war stops, but the world has changed forever. Tens of thousands are dead. Energy markets crash. Europe lies scarred by missile strikes and mass evacuations. And the realization sets in. The next conflict might not end with diplomacy. In the aftermath, analysts call it the 3 days of fire, a conflict that nearly erased the line between conventional and nuclear war. A preview of what the next global war would look like: automated, chaotic, and unstoppable. In 72 hours, the world went from stability to annihilation's doorstep. The lesson is clear. The next world war will not begin with an invasion, but with a miscalculation. The day NATO strikes back may be the last day the world remembers peace.